What's up, everyone? All right, so we're going to get started here. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about my 10 millionaire students. Now, this is an episode that I've been thinking about doing for a while. I have separately interviewed a number of these traders, and I was able to sort of consolidate takeaways from each of those different interviews. And I put together what I sort of look at as seven aptitudes, skills, and traits that they all share. And so that's what I want to share with you today. I think it's helpful as an aspiring trader, beginner trader, intermediate, or even an advanced trader to get inspiration from traders that are a little further down the line that have achieved some degree of success. But I want to remind everyone, and I'm going to put my disclaimer up again right here. As we jump into this episode, thank you guys for tuning in. I want to remind you that their results, just like my own, are not typical. At Warrior, we don't track the typical result of traders in our community, so I can't give you any guarantee that you're more or less likely to succeed, whether you trade on your own or you learn from me. So I'm just going to put it out there at the very beginning that trading is risky, and it is the minority. It is a small, tiny percentage who find the success of making over $1 million. Having said that, I think it's valuable to try to take some lessons from those who have found that high degree of success. So that's what I want to talk about here today. All right. So, and many of you guys, those tuning in, I'm hosting this live because I want to be able to do Q&A. And I just love doing live, teaching live, and being able to talk like this so I can see your comments and feedback and everything else. So thank you guys who are here live. Thank you for hitting the thumbs up. Thank you for subscribing. My name's Ross Cameron. I'm the founder of Warrior Trading, and I took my first trade when I was in high school. I can't remember if it was the summer of my sophomore year or the summer in between sophomore and junior, or the summer between junior and senior. But I think it was between sophomore and junior. So 16, 17 years old when I took my first trade. So that's more than 20 years ago. And over all my years of trading, I really got into it pretty heavy in my 20s. That's when I really started focusing on making this a career. And I've actually made over $10 million in gross profit. I always keep my audit. I have my broker statements audited at the end of each year. So this was the audit from the end of last year, which at that time showed $9.5 million in gross profit. Net profit. And at the top, you'll see January of 2017, I started with $583 in my account. You can see that right there. So that was the very beginning of the small account challenge. Now, the traders that I'm going to be talking about today have all substantiated to me through their broker statements, and we have a compliance officer that reviews them, a compliance member on our team. They've all substantiated at least $1 million in trading profit. I just had my 10th student verify $1 million, and I'm super, super proud of that. So I always give those traders, those students, the opportunity to do an interview with me. Not all of them want to, because not all of them, want the spotlight and things like that. But I have done a number of these interviews. And so let's talk about some of these traits and aptitudes that I've seen as sort of a common denominator among these traders who have become very successful. So one of the first is that all of the traders that I've met who have made over $1 million in profit, they are all, and this is probably not surprising, extremely driven, extremely competitive, aggressive, and they're self-starters. So this is sort of, I sort of lump this all into one personality trait, I guess I would say. They're the type of people that are, I wouldn't say they're type A personalities necessarily, because they're not all type A personalities, but they are all quite aggressive, quite competitive, and very independent. And I think that what's kind of interesting there, and many of you can probably relate to this, is that independent streak, that desire to want to be your own boss. Many of us who are day traders that's one of the reasons that we got into trading. We wanted to be our own boss. We didn't want to work a 9 to 5 job. We didn't want to work for someone else. And so we're often quite independent. And what sets apart those who become very successful is being a self-starter, being competitive, and really being super driven. You have to be a bit of a self-starter with trading because, especially when I got into trading, there really wasn't a lot of well consolidated like educational classes for day trading. I mean, there was some stuff out there, but it was a lot of piecemeal. So a lot of traders that were getting started when I got started had to really piece things together themselves. And so, you have to be quite a self-starter to be able to do that. You've got to be very just out there trying to find the answers and trying to, have critical thinking skills and be able to put things together and to be able to see, of all the things out there, all the different pieces of information, what is valid, what is not valid, what do I throw out, what do I hang on to? And so that, I think, does by itself require a sort of higher level of thinking than maybe a lot of people just in sort of general population might have. We know that most traders don't find success. So I think one of the things that I'm always thinking about is, why is that the case? Why is it that most traders lose money, right? We've got to figure that out. So we can sort of talk about that separately. And then what is it that those who are successful are doing right? And so as an aspiring trader, when I was getting started, one of my things was like, how can I get into the mindset? Like, what is a successful trader doing? What are they trading? What is their strategy? How are they thinking? How did they get there? And my sort of thought was like, how can that become a blueprint that I can learn, study, and follow as much as possible? So I hope that this will be serve that to a certain extent. So the first is very driven, competitive, aggressive, and I guess I would also say a self-starter, of course. And under that same category, I would probably say a bit of a risk taker, right? Because we know that day trading is risky. I say it a million times, so you guys have heard it from me, but we all know that trading is in fact risky because most people lose money, and people can lose a lot of money. And trading for some people becomes really like gambling. They're not able to manage their risk in a safe way, and it just very quickly turns into gambling. So a willingness to take risk. We know that I think it's common knowledge that men are considered a higher risk tolerance. They're bigger risk takers. And so it is the case right now that all 10 of the members, my students that have made over $1 million, are all men. I would love to have a woman be, among that community or among, a $1 million badge holder. It just hasn't been the case yet. And risk tolerance may be a factor there because trading is risky. We certainly know that. Sometimes you see men doing these crazy things like, balancing on, one ladder, sitting on top of like a, off balance table, trying to like fix like, an electrical line or something like that. So I think we can get very kind of like, narrow-minded, like this is what I have to get done, and sort of put out all the risk related to it. So that's number one. Number two is I see this trait of sort of perfectionism in a lot of the traders who have both big badges, like 500K badges, but also $1 million badges. And the perfectionism is this, like, this feeling that I kind of describe as being an itch, because I have it myself. It's this inability to be completely content, this feeling that you can do better and that you should do better and that there's other people out there doing better, which is also a little bit of competitiveness. But that perfectionism, kind of competitiveness, I feel like that is kind of like the carrot that dangles in front of us that keeps us rolling forward, that keeps us moving forward, that keeps us evolving, developing our strategies, and just trying to continually do better. One of the things about trading that's kind of interesting Uh, Among the traders in the community that have a $1 million badge, one of them is sort of very interesting. He's a trader who's been doing this for a long time. I don't know, I don't remember exactly when he started, but I want to say he's been trading for at least 7 years, maybe a little bit longer. So for him to make $1 million over the course of 7 years, or well, he got the badge a few years ago, but in any case, I don't know that he's ever made more than maybe $300,000 a year. I'm not totally sure. I'd have to go and double check, but he hasn't had like $1 million year. Now, some of the badge holders got their badge within a year, which is just absolutely phenomenal. But this other badge holder that I'm thinking of, he's someone that has really focused on just kind of taking small winners, small winners, small winners. And that's actually a little bit atypical because most of the $1 million badge holders, most of them have scaled their strategy. And he's one of the few that hasn't. So I don't know. We don't necessarily have to focus on the exception there. But for all the others, something that you end up having to do is scale your strategy. So I found for myself that if I'm focusing just on base hits, hitting $200, $400, $600 a day, for me right now where I'm at in my career, that's not very difficult. I'm not saying that trading is easy, so don't misinterpret that. It is difficult and my results are not typical. But for me, base hits of $500, that is not really, for me at this point, very hard. However, hitting $500 a day, that doesn't quite cut it for where I'm at in my career. I have a daily goal right now of 5,000. So for me, in order to get up to 5,000, I'm having to take a fair amount of risk each day. And what I actually have to do is I have to sacrifice taking just a $500, $700 base hit on a trade that I could just take, $700 off the table. Let's just say, for instance, I buy 5,000 shares of a stock at $5 and it goes up to 520. I'd be up $1,000, 20 cents on 5,000 shares. And a base hit trader probably would take all of it off the table at 510, 515 and lock up, $500, $600, $700 of profit. A trader who's got more experience is going to sacrifice that initial $500, $700, and at 520, they'll add another 5,000 shares. Now they've got a 10,000 share position with a 510 cost basis, and when it goes up to 545, they might add another 5,000 shares. It breaks 550, goes to 565, and they're taking it all off the table for $4,000 or $5,000 of profit, right? But in order to do that, you have to take a level of risk that not all traders are going to be comfortable with because you're sacrificing the base hits. So that's something that I think is a natural part of the learning curve and sort of the curve of profitability that most traders at a certain point will be faced with, either being content with just kind of locking up small base hits, small base hits, small base hits, or they try to push themselves to get to kind of the edge of their comfort zone, which means trading with larger size, taking more risk, and naturally with confidence and experience, that's going to increase profitability. But there will be times naturally where a trader will run into, some obstacles, and they'll find that they've sized up too quickly. They're starting to have trades where they now have 10,000 shares at that $5, 10-cent average, and then it flushes to 480 and they're down $3,000. They could have locked up $500, $600 and instead they're sitting there down 3,000, right? So scaling up takes a willingness to carry some risk and a willingness to be pretty aggressive. But it is a trait that almost all very successful traders have. And I think that's part of that perfectionism, sort of competitiveness of trying to, they see the other person, they're like, okay, I can do better. They see other people out there in the market who throw down big numbers and they're like, okay, I can try throwing down some bigger numbers. I need to take a little bit more share size. I need to hold a little longer. And it's that trying to just continue to get a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. So the first maybe natural aptitude or personality trait of the 10 millionaire students that I have right now. The first one, for those just tuning in, thank you guys, was that they're extremely driven, they're self-starters, they're competitive and aggressive generally. They're doing something that's pretty risky, and they're doing it really well, and that requires this ability to be I think really aggressive and very driven. The second trait is a little bit of perfectionism, in the sense of not being content with just hitting $200 or $300 a day. They're trying to scale that to 2,000 or 3,000. And when they get to 2 or 3,000, they're trying to scale it to 10 or 15. And when they get to 10 or 15, they're trying to scale it to 20 or 30. And most day traders realize at a certain point that there is a ceiling to scalability in day trading. You cannot, for most traders, buy 500,000 shares and get in and out in a period of 10 minutes the way you could with 5,000 shares or 500 shares. So you do run into a bit of a scalability limit when it comes to day trading. And then that's when some of those traders are forced, if they're really, comparing themselves to others, they're competitive and they're trying to do better, they start to look at taking some of the profits from day trading and rolling that into either long-term investing, which of course requires sort of coming back to the drawing board because it's a totally different strategy, or investing in real estate or building out a business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to keep scaling their income. So the third attribute, and this is just sort of, this is an interesting one, is that a lot of the traders who have made over $1 million, and a lot of the traders who have larger badges at Warrior, 100K, 500K, et cetera, a lot of them do have multiple sources of income. And this is one that is super frustrating. So what's frustrating about it, and I can relate to this because this wasn't the case for me when I got started trading. What's frustrating about it is it feels sometimes that the people who need the money the least are the ones who make the most. And it's like, come on, man, like this, what's the deal? How is it that this person who doesn't need the money, they've already got income from this and this and this, whatever it is, that they just sit down and in their first year of trading, they crush it, right? I've been working at this for years and I can't seem to make an average of 200 a day, 50,000 a year. And so what multiple sources of income means is what's really important here. What it means is that the pressure for day trading to be super profitable is actually quite low. And so when you get into something and the stakes are low, it changes your psychology. It changes you from coming at it from a place of desperation, where you're grasping at straws, where you're like, I need to make $5,000 so I can pay bills at the end of this month. And then when you start getting, you're back up against the wall and it's like the 15th of the month and you haven't gotten there, or it's the 20th, the 25th, you start getting desperate. You start taking really high risk trades because you have this pressure. And so when you take away all of that pressure, then you have someone who is approaching trading from this genuine perspective of, I want to learn about this thing. I have some money to work with. I've set up my trading account. I can afford to use the right tools, right? Because sometimes when you're really tight on money, you're not going to use the right broker. You're not going to use the right tools. So then you're making things more difficult on yourselves. So they can afford the right tools. They can afford the right broker, and they can afford some losses. And so they don't get that fear in them, right? Because what a lot of traders do is they start trading emotionally. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why a lot of people lose money. Now, it's not to say that the people who have gotten $1 million badges were all millionaires before they started trading. It's not to say that they were in like the top 1%, but they had enough of a cushion that they were able to approach trading without the added pressure. Now, that wasn't the case for me. When I got started, I didn't have other sources of income, right? Of course, obviously, when I was 16, 17 years old, my other income was mowing lawns. But as I got into my 20s, I had a regular job, like sort of during college and then right after college. And then when I got into trading, that job had ended. And so I didn't have income. I had nothing for income. So for me, there was a lot of pressure. And I kept thinking, if I can make 200 a day, that is going to be such a game changer between being able to afford my lifestyle at that time, living in Vermont, and be able to make trading work, or having to go find a regular job. So there was a lot of pressure. And then that created a lot of fear. When I would start to get into a losing trade, all of a sudden that fear would set in of, oh my God, this trade is gonna, if this goes the wrong way, this is gonna ruin my month. If it ruins my month, it means I won't be able to pay these bills at the end of the month. If I can't pay these bills at the end of the month, I'm gonna have to start thinking about going and getting a regular job or accumulating more credit card debt because I'm not able to pay the minimum balance. And so all of those emotions start to fire off when I have even one losing trade. And so how do I alleviate that? Instead of cutting the loss quickly, I hold on to it and I hope that it'll turn around, because I don't have to really fully think about all those things until the loss is real. And so that creates that emotion of holding losers too long. And then inversely, when you're in a trade that's a winner and you're up like $100, you're like, oh my God, I'm just gonna sell the whole thing because I cannot risk this turning into a loser and going against me. And so again, it's that fear of loss that causes you to sell your winners way too soon. And so what you end up with are average losers that are big, average winners that are small. And from just a statistical perspective, you would need to be firing and at like 80% accuracy in order just to break even. And that's not realistic. I don't achieve 80% accuracy. I mean, maybe in a course of like 1 or 2 days here and there, but generally speaking, over the course of 15, 20,000 trades, I'm coming in at like 69, 70%. But my average winners and average losers are about the same size. And so at 69, 70%, I'm making money, right? So this is one of these things where I did a session with Ted, who runs trading psychology at Warrior. So to give you a little bit of a backstory, when I was learning how to trade, or when I was getting back into trading in my 20s, I had gotten married and I had a lot of pressure of paying bills and all that stuff. And I also had a lot of pressure on the marriage side that if that marriage was going to work, this kind of career needed to work, because being unemployed, that wasn't really working, and not being able to pay bills and all that stuff. So I started seeing, I reached out to try to find a therapist, psychologist that I could see so I could sort of talk through these issues that I was having. And it was really like marriage counseling. I mean, that's really like what it started with. I'm not like, it felt like we weren't on the same page. Me and my at this point ex-wife. So I started seeing Ted, and this was more than 10 years ago that I started seeing him. And pretty early on in seeing him, I would see him, I think it was on Fridays. And so I kept kind of being in this situation where I'd be like, hey, Ted, he'd be like, how's your week? I'd be like, well, I just took a huge loss today trading. And because that was so much of the forefront. I mean, of course, if I'd had maybe an argument or something, that might've been the topic, but it seemed more often than not, the thing that I was talking about was trading. And I sort of felt like if I can get this trading thing figured out, that the other things will fall into place. And I think that was a little bit backwards, because it was all the pressure from the marriage and all this other stuff that was actually making trading really difficult. And it was making me more emotional when I was trading. And so as I worked with Ted, he really helped me a lot develop this sense of self-awareness around how my emotions were flowing right into my trading, how I would press the buy and sell button with anger, with frustration, not necessarily from the trade, but from everything else that was happening outside my life. And so I've developed this sense of self-awareness even today, that you'll sometimes see me like, I'll have like a couple losses and I'll be like, all right, guys, you know what? I'm done. And that's because I'm already starting to feel that frustration, that anger, whatever it is building up. And I've been able to just very quickly kind of get in front of that. So although I didn't add this as sort of one of the 7 traits I was going to talk about, I probably could, but there is definitely a requirement, I think, as a trader, to have a pretty high level of emotional intelligence. And that is your self-awareness, your ability to recognize when you're making emotionally impulsive decisions. And I'll sometimes see it in other people, and I can tell them, I could be like, man, I see what you're doing. I see the pattern that you're in right now because I used to be there. And I'm telling you, you have two choices. You can either keep doing what you're doing, and you're probably eventually going to the pressure's going to get so built up that you're going to blow up your account. Or you can make the difficult but very affirmative decision right now to start doing things differently. And I know it's hard because I know it's not fun to rein yourself in, but you've got to put rules on yourself and you've got to have the discipline to follow them. But really, what I wanted to really say on this point, this is the third point, was how much multiple sources of income affects your trading psychology. And so if you are not in a place where you have multiple sources of income, you sort of have a couple options. One is to try to start developing them. And there's a lot of ways that you can develop side hustle income, whether it's driving for Uber or Lyft, or, it's doing things online. There's a lot of different types of things you could do for work online. I mean, there's a lot that you could do. And I think if you start doing those, you start having income coming in from other places, that positions you a little bit better when it comes to trading. And if you're not in a place where you're able to get that, then that's where you have to start thinking about, how can I develop this self-awareness to recognize that the stakes are high for me, but I'm going to continue to try to work, even though I'm probably going to have a little bit of a shorter fuse for all of these obvious reasons. And so if you check out my podcast, I did an episode with Ted where we talked about how you fake it till you make it in terms of trading psychology. How can you put yourself in the headspace of a profitable trader even when you aren't already there? Because it seems that sometimes just approaching it from that perspective by itself puts you at an advantage. And it feels that those that have multiple sources of income, they're coming in with the right mindset, maybe without even realizing it, but just because of the fact that those multiple sources of income brings the pressure down. So low pressure, doing it just for the enjoyment of it, that's when the stakes are going to be lower. The fourth skill that I would say is pretty common among traders, the 10 who have made over $1 million. And by the way, disclaimer again, for those that didn't already hear it, we don't track the typical result of traders in our community. So I can't say that you are any more or less likely to succeed, whether you trade on your own or you learn from me. We do have 10 traders who have submitted broker statements and voluntarily shown me that they've made over $1 million. And so those are the traders I'm talking about today, but they are no doubt a small percentage because we know that most traders will not achieve anything like that. So I just want to be very transparent about that. So the fourth skill of these traders, I would say, is a degree of computer savvy, computer skills, which, sometimes, my wife's great aunt Gina, sometimes she's from New York, and she'll say, Ross, oh, what's a good stock I should buy? And she's so funny. She, what should I buy? What's a good stock? Do you think I could day trade? And obviously the answer is no. She's in her late 80s. This is like never. She's not a day trader, and that's totally okay. But sometimes people will think that maybe it's as easy as just, I don't know. I'm not sure what they always think, but it does require a certain degree of computer skills. So I think if you're someone that has, never traded or never used a computer once in your life, which is sometimes the case, someone will come in, they've worked some type of job for their entire career where it wasn't based on a computer. Maybe it was landscaping or construction work or something like that. And so now they have two things they need to learn. One is sort of how to use a computer, because I think for a lot of us younger folks, I'm 37, but folks that are a little bit younger, because we grew up on computers, the computer can feel like an extension of our mind and body. It just in our control of it, our ability to use it, to generate income, to find information, all of that. It just, to me, I feel like that's, it's just sort of a minimum requirement that I think that is important. Now, at the end of the day, computer skills is not more important than having multiple sources of income, than being extremely driven, than having discipline and things like that. It's not more important than that. It's just another one of these sort of blocks in the foundation that I see as being common among those who have found success. Okay, so number 4 was computer skills. And I'm not talking about being a computer wizard, programming, or anything like that, but basic computer competency. Number 5, this is an interesting one. It's an ability I see to make fairly quick decisions. I've known traders who would find themselves paralyzed at the moment they needed to make a decision. And I think that came from fear. It came from a place of being afraid to pull the trigger, just afraid of losing money. And so perhaps the ability to make quick decisions is a byproduct of confidence. When you have more confidence, it's easier to make quick decisions, to pull the trigger, to jump in or to jump out as needed on a trade. But I noted that because that ability to make quick decisions is important. When you see a stock setting up, you see a pattern forming, it's an opportunity. And that there's a window within that opportunity where you can take a position. And then, of course, there's going to be a window where you've missed it, and if you've missed it, and you've got to wait for the next one. So I think an ability to make quick decisions is important. That's not going to be something that everyone is naturally good at, but I do think confidence is going to help it. Number 6, I would say, is knowing when to walk away. This is an interesting one because I've known so many traders that chronically overtrade. And this is tough because the fact is the market is open from 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 8 p.m. after hours. And of course, if you want to trade crypto, which some people end up doing, you could do that 24 hours a day. Now, if you want to go to Las Vegas, you could gamble at the casinos 24 hours a day, right? And there are, of course, professional poker players that go to the casinos and they know they are consistently coming out on top. And, there's people who are card counters and can play blackjack and consistently walk away with profit. Of course, they are, again, the minority. And I think the thing here is that if you're one of those people that's a card counter, or you're a poker player, semi-professional, professional, or you're a trader, you're going to know that there has to be a set of rules that dictate how you approach this game, so to speak, so that you're not a gambler, but you are consistently, predictably profitable. And so when you follow those rules, when you have the discipline to follow those rules, that's when you do well. And I wouldn't think that a professional gambler, if you call it gambling at that point, I don't think you really would, because it's not really a game of chance when you have consistency based on track record. But if you're a professional poker player or blackjacks or whatever it is, my thought is that you would not probably be in the casino for 24 hours straight, drinking coffee or, I don't know, doing whatever to keep yourself awake. That feels like that inability to walk away starts to fall onto the gambler mindset. And this is something that I want to be very transparent about. The fact that there are people who come onto Wall Street to just gamble, not intentionally, but they get hooked, and they might not even realize that what they're doing, what their behavior is gambling. If you are coming in, you are consistently losing money, you don't have a strategy, you have no rules that you're following, that's gambling. And one of the worst things, I suppose, is that some people will come in with no rules and really no sense of risk management, but they will make money. And many traders who came in on meme stocks early on, your GameStops, AMC, etc., a lot of them did make money. And that can be one of the worst things because it can create this belief that you know what you're doing, when in fact you don't. And a lot of times money made through luck like that is eventually given back, and even times many multiples as you start to go negative on this endeavor. So knowing when to walk away is part of your strategy. While it may fit within the strategy of some traders to trade from 4 a.m. until 8 p.m., I think that, that's very, very uncommon. I really don't know of any traders that consistently try to do, 12, 14-hour, 16-hour days trading. I just have really never heard of someone who's consistently profitable who does that. But of course, I haven't heard of everyone who's profitable, so it's possible there are some people that fall into that camp. I would also question, if you're in that camp, whether or not you're actually gaining the benefits of being a trader, which to me are freedom, lifestyle, the ability to work for only a few hours each day and then not have to work 8 hours. But of course, if you're really, really hungry and trying to make as much as possible, some might think the longer I'm in the market, the more I'll make. And that may be true for some, but I don't think it's true for most. And so one of the challenges there is knowing when to walk away, because at any time when you walk away, you're then faced with the reality of what happens if this stock ends up going up 300% after I leave. How do I feel? Do I feel FOMO, fear of missing out? Do I feel regret of missing out? Do I feel angry? Do I then take that out on the next day, on my next trades? Or are you able to simply say, well, it doesn't really matter. I'm sure there are people that traded that entire move that made less than what I made this morning in 2 hours. My job is to sit here from, whatever it is, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. or 7 a.m. to 11, whatever it is. So anything that happens outside that it doesn't really matter, because that's not when I trade. And so knowing when to walk away is very important, and that can be really, really hard for a lot of traders. And then so that was number 6, and number 7, which is possibly the most important, is having the discipline to follow the rules of your strategy, having the discipline to not overtrade, having the discipline to be patient. And so this is a question that I often ask beginner traders. I'll ask you, how badly do you want this? How badly do you want to make this happen? And if you really want it badly enough, you will adopt the discipline to not put real money or any substantial money on the line until you have first proven success, either in a simulator or trading with like 1, 5, or 10 shares. If you have a free commission broker, you'll have the discipline to pay your dues and study before you put big money on the line. You'll have the discipline to wait for good quality setups, to not give into FOMO, to not chase stuff. You'll have the discipline to not hold your losers, average down, and turn them into huge, massive blow up losses. That's discipline. And discipline is a muscle. It's something that you have to really exercise. You have to really develop it. And if you're not exercising it, it can atrophy. It's not something you have and then you have it forever. You are constantly having to work on it. And I find that myself, that there are times where I feel that I've got great discipline and I'm following my rules really well. And then there's other times where, for whatever reason, I just feel like I'm in, a little bit of a funk and I'm more emotionally impulsive, or I have a shorter fuse, et cetera, et cetera. I've fortunately been able to develop a degree of self-awareness that I can usually see when I'm in those different places. So there's always, even within a very successful trader, there's a spectrum of sort of emotional, self-control and discipline and things like that. And so you might find yourself at various times on one side or another. But I would say that these 7 traits that I've found to be pretty common among the 10 traders who've made over $1 million, my 10 students who've made over $1 million, and common among 500K and 100K badge holders. Number 1, being extremely driven, self-starter, very often competitive. Number 2, perfectionist, wanting to do better. And I don't know if perfectionism is the right word, but that's a little bit of a competitiveness of wanting to do better, competitive with themselves. Number 3, often have multiple sources of income. Number 4, have decent computer skills at the least. Number 5, are able to make fairly quick decisions and have the confidence to pull the trigger when they needed to. Now, that confidence comes from experience. It comes from it comes from having a track record. And so when you have a good track record, your confidence builds. So what I always focus on is accuracy first. If you focus on having the discipline and patience to wait for A-quality trades, your accuracy will usually get better because you're not giving into the emotional impulse of chasing stuff and taking bad quality trades. So number 1, focus on accuracy. Trade the best, leave the rest. Focus on highest quality setups. What usually follows, if you have enough experience under your belt, is your profits and your total profit loss rate, your profit loss ratio improves and your accuracy improves, which then confidence comes right in behind that. And so now as your confidence goes up, of course, your ability to make quick decisions is going to be better. Number 6, knowing when to walk away, super important. And number 7, having the discipline to follow your rules, to not overtrade, to be patient, and to always keep improving, right? But you have to follow the rules of your strategy. When you stop following the rules, that's when you start to fall into that potential mindset of being a gambler. And that's where you have to be really, really careful. And again, I'm going to reiterate, I've got a couple more things I want to share with you, but I want to reiterate that everything that I'm talking about here today, I'm talking about my success. I'm talking about the success of 10 of my students, and I've taught thousands of traders all around the world. I want you to know that my results and their results are not typical, that trading is risky. So I can't make any guarantee that you are any more likely to succeed, whether you're trading with me or learning on your own, than these traders. The odds of success in trading is very low. So please take it slow. I really encourage practicing in a simulator, but I understand that not everyone will. So what I would encourage second to that is trading with really small share size and not allowing yourself to go big until you first have a track record. You use that track record to justify why you are a better investment than putting your money just in the S&P 500 or something like that. So yeah, I would say that, and I noticed, thank you, by the way, for all the folks who are tuning in, and thanks Koss for tuning in. He's got a 500K badge at Warrior, and he's been doing a phenomenal job. So he was saying, you don't need to be a millionaire. You have to be consistent with your gains. And something I would add on to that is that I have noticed, especially with meme stocks, that there's been this, I think a lot of traders that are attracted to the lottery ticket, the big home run. And the fact is, when you're focusing on these crazy home runs, like buying out of the money options, calls that are priced, 300% higher than the current stock, naturally you could buy those usually for like 10 cents, 15 cents, because nobody really buys them. But then every now and then you have a GameStop or something like that goes totally crazy, and the traders who bought those at 15 cents and they're suddenly worth $1.50, $3, $5, those are the people that are turning 1,000 into 10,000, 15,000, maybe $100,000. And that's lottery ticket stuff. Now, if that's what you like, that's fine. But this episode right here and my whole channel is based on day trading. And so while I sometimes think, gosh, I certainly have enough money that I could have bought those same 10,000 calls and made, $20 million. On the other hand, doing that would have been a complete gamble. And what I value more than an occasional maybe lottery ticket that pays off, because naturally out of all the lottery tickets you buy, out of all of those types of trades that you take, most of them are worthless. A couple maybe huge winners, but then at the end of the day, what's really important to me is consistency. And if I can and so this is one of the things that I sometimes tell myself, if I've had a couple of bad trades, if I've started to dig myself a hole, I'm getting too emotional, I scale down and focus on hitting small, consistent base hits. Those can be those $500 days where I hit the 500, I hit it and quit it. That's it. I'm in, I'm done, 500, I'm out. And after 5-10 days in a row of getting $500, $700 a day, there's a squirrel running by with a nut back there, I feel more confident. And I start to remind myself that, yes, this is what it's about, 500 a day. And then once that confidence comes back, then I start to feel just naturally comfortable scaling back up. But it's so easy to get kind of off your center. And when you take really big losses, it can knock you off your center. And usually big losses, typically they are the result of breaking one of the rules you set for your strategy. Because most strategies don't really, it's not within most strategies to have huge losses. So a huge loss could happen if you buy a stock that has a huge spread, you didn't realize it, and then it reverses. It could happen trading a stock that ends up just doing a huge false breakout and halting down, but your initial entry was a little bit of a chase. So, that type of stuff, you in hindsight realize you probably mismanaged risk on that trade. And the unfortunate thing is you not only have to deal with the initial loss, but you have to deal with the fact that that loss is going to shake you off your center. And then for the next few days, even the next few weeks, you're going to have to spend time with smaller share size, just kind of regaining focus. Because one of the worst things you can do after a big loss is come back on day 2, trading twice as aggressively to try to make all of that loss back in one trade. But people do it. And then next thing you know, they're down twice as much, 3 times as much. And that's how quickly traders can start to spiral. A trader who was very much in a good mindset, but maybe wasn't having to exercise a lot of discipline because things were just going well. It was a really strong bull market. All of a sudden, that big loss shakes them. They go right into that emotionally fueled trading, and the spiral begins. So I would urge caution. One of the things that is certainly stressful for any beginner trader is when you maybe first start to find some success and then catching that first really big red trade, after having a little period of success, because that's when you're questioning, were those last few weeks just luck? Like what's going on? And if that loss shakes you off your center and you're not able to scale down and do the right things, then next thing you know, you can just start to spiral. So I think part of every strategy has to have a bit of a contingency plan for what happens when I have a big loss, right? Because a big loss will eventually happen. I mean, as much as we try to avoid it, it'll happen. And it could be something like you were in a trade and you lost internet. It could be totally not your fault at all. I mean, of course, you can have backup internets and things like that to prevent. But in any case, it could just be something happens. Your broker goes offline. That's totally out of your control. Well, I guess you could choose a different broker. But again, like I said, you have things that could happen. So now you have to pull out that contingency plan of, okay, I just took this big loss. What do I do? And what I encourage is sizing down, coming back in with smaller share size to try to slowly build back. So I hope this has been really helpful for you. If you want to check out over at Warrior Trading, we have an All-Star Traders page, which is a blog that follows the same format of these 7 items that I just talked about today, these 7 attributes. You could check that out. I'll put a link to that down in the description. There's also a podcast over there that you could watch where I was talking with other badge holders about some of these attributes of success. So I hope you guys check that out. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I hope you hit the thumbs up if you do. And I want to remind you, again, I've already said it several times, but I want to just be very, very clear that trading is risky. And although I'm very happy and proud of these 10 traders, these 10 students that have made over $1 million, and I'm not going to say that I created 10 millionaires because I can't take 100% credit for it. They came to the table with all of these natural aptitudes that made them more likely to succeed. But I'm really proud of them and grateful that they entrusted me to help guide them as they were getting started. And so I always love highlighting them. But I have to say, as I highlight them, that on the other hand, please remember that this is very risky because most traders do lose money. So it's important to think about what those who are doing right are doing that allows them to be so successful, but just at the same time, think about how many people lose money and what you need to do to manage your risk as you're getting started, because there is no guarantee. All right. So please take it slow, practice in a simulator. And if you want to check out a couple more episodes, I could put a couple more links to episodes right here and right here that you guys can check out. And remember, I'll be back at it for the morning show first thing tomorrow morning, live streaming right around 9 a.m. So you can tune in. You can see what I'm looking at for the morning, my watch list. Maybe I'll take some trades if we've got something looking interesting. So looking forward to seeing you guys back at it in the morning. And thank you, as always, for tuning in. If this has been helpful, leave some comments below. Let me know your thoughts. And I'll see you back here for the next episode. All right. See you guys soon.